I think I'm now combobulated. So, good morning, everybody. Thank you, those of you who showed up early and on time. Thank you for being here early and on time. And want to go ahead and get started. So, we have a few people, I think, who are new or that we've never really heard from. So, Mike, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself again and just kind of give people a 2-minute overview of who you are and what you do?
Okay, thank you very much. Really appreciate being part of it. I chair an organization with the letter CCLAC. We are a research and development organization, having developed an important information system app in which we track the activity of pairs of individuals, young people who are instructing adults how to use technology in exchange for the creation of a conversation between generations. We're finding that more and more people recognize that this isolation that the digital world has created has also been a problem that is a mental health problem for the youth and an addiction that is now prevalent. And we feel that CLAC is one of the few organizations that we have seen that is actually dealing with the problem rather than just saying, oh, it's really awful how much the kids are concentrating. We hope that in our area here in Tucson, we can find some partner organizations that are youth driven. Give us access to your youth and let us begin a process locally of engaging and tracking those activity with qualitative data that we collect in the system. Thank you.
So, Mike, you're actually in Southern Arizona, aren't you? You're not in Tucson, are you?
I am in Tucson. I upgraded from Bisbee.
Oh,
Uh,
interesting. So I've known Mike for 30 some odd years, and he has been yelling about broadband, lack of availability of broadband, and being a long-term advocate for the resources of young people. So thank you, Mike. So let's see who else we got. Who else is new here today? So Mike, you were home here last time, Mike Coombs, but you want to just tell people quickly who you are?
uh-huh.
Matt Coombs, I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you. I'm with Ackerman Consulting Group, and like you mentioned, we've been here before and shared a little bit about our broadband technical assistance grant that we got. But we're serving Arizona and really working to drive and build that bridge with the gap between rural communities and broadband. So thanks for having us, and it's always interesting to hear what everybody's doing to really work on that collectively. And I do want to give a quick shout out to Erin's message in the chat. I had not heard the 30-30 rule, but I think I have to agree with her. So that's a good one as well.
Yeah, I love the comments you guys made. I am almost in the
Thanks.
wilderness here. Actually, before I move on, so those of you who may have joined a couple minutes late, so as you know, I am on vacation. I am on a lake in Minnesota, and this cabin, I'm in a cabin that is over 100 years old, has no heating and no air conditioning, which most of the time we didn't need. Um, and today it is raining and low of 67 when I woke up this morning. And it is now well, it'll be a high of 84 later today. So just to make you all jealous. Um, so that's enough of that. Right? I saw you shaking your head. Um, let's see, who else do we have? Joseph, you want to remind people again who you are?
Yeah, Joe Furnell with Rural Prosperity Partners. We're actually part of the Ackerman team with that broadband technical assistance grant from the USDA. And we're a technical assistance firm. We're actually based out of Oregon, but doing work in Arizona with the Ackerman group.
Great.
So
Thank
yeah, glad to be here.
Good. Thanks, Joseph. And David,
Yes,
I see you're here again. I'm not going to ask you to introduce yourself again, but but I did see you. Maximilian, can you introduce yourself? Who are you, please?
Yeah, good morning. So my name is Max Ivankovich. I'm the Director of Market Planning and Development for Wired Fiber. And so our goal is to bring a more cost-effective, reliable, faster broadband connection to Greater Tucson.
Great. So glad to see you.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
You bet. And anybody else that's new that I've missed? Well, I know she's not new, but Carla, it's good to see you. We don't see you very often.
Good morning, everyone. My apologies. Yes, it's been hectic and it's going to continue to be hectic, but happy to be here this morning.
Well, I know you're very busy between the Tech Council and being a governing board member for Pima Community College, and God knows what else you're engaged in. So appreciate you.
All the things, all the fun things.
Yeah. Okay. Sky, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, just as a newbie.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sky Downing, and I am pleased to have been invited by Steve to join you all in this meeting. I am the Deputy Director of Digital Lift, formerly known as Community Tech Network, or CTN. And for those of you who are not familiar with what we do, Digital Lift believes that digital access is foundational for health, opportunity, and connected communities. And we partner with organizations across all sectors to deliver multilingual, community-rooted digital training programs that uplift individuals and strengthen systems. So our mission is to transform lives through digital access, education, and empowerment. And we envision a world like all of you where everyone can thrive through connectivity.
Great. Thanks, Sky. And we're going to schedule Sky. I should have done this weeks ago, so apologize, Sky, but we're going to schedule Sky to actually do a more in-depth overview of the work that they're doing. So did I miss anybody that's new today?
You know what, Steve, I don't
Good
know.
morning, Steve.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, who was that? Somebody had a question there.
Hi, Steve. Just wanted to chime in as well. This is Greg Wilson with Pima Community
Oh my
College, and
gosh.
I'm between meetings, so I had to join by phone. So good morning to everybody.
Well, good
Good
morning,
morning,
Greg.
Greg. And Steve, what I was going to tell you, we were so perfectly in sync. I was going to say, I believe Pima Community College is on the line as well. So thank you, Greg, for joining. I'm glad that you're here.
Thank you, Carla.
Yeah. Hey, Greg, long time no see. I know you're busy.
Yes, good to be back.
Yeah. So, Greg, why don't you just take a couple of minutes and tell people, what you're doing, who you are and what you're doing and all the amazing stuff that's happening.
Sure. Well, like Sky, right, Carla, and all of us at the college, our mission is to help transform lives as well. And for those of you I haven't met yet, I am the Dean of Applied Technology, and that covers quite a few programs, including automation and robotics, aviation, for those of you who will be joining us tomorrow for the Aerospace and Defense gathering, as well as welding, machining, automotive. I could go on, but really just work with our faculty and staff, again, to prepare students for either careers in industry, but we'll also be starting some entrepreneurship classes this fall. So for those students who want to start their own business, we do that too. And then, of course, we do a great job upskilling employees who are already working in industry. So glad to join again. It's been a long time, Steve. I went back through emails, so glad to just listen in and contribute where we can.
It has been a long time, and it's good to hear from you. He and I also, like many of you, go back, I don't know, probably 20, 30 years, Greg.
At least 20, yes.
Yeah, long time. And the new facility that you have, I haven't, is pretty awesome. So I need to come back and kind of check out what's happening. You were just getting going at the last time I was down there.
Actually, I'll offer to you and the group, if you have not been to the downtown campus, we give tours sometimes daily, but certainly we could set up a time for those of you who have not seen the Center of Excellence in Applied Technology. We'd be happy to show it off.
They also have an amazing automotive facility too. So, Aaron, you have your hand raised.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Good morning. I was also on vacation last week, Steve, so I'm a little jealous of you that you're still on vacation. I just need to say hi to everybody. My name is Erin Larandos. I am giving an update today. I am no longer with the Arizona Commerce Authority as of the end of June. So I just wanted to say this to this group, since a lot of you probably have my Commerce Authority email address. If you email that one now, you're not going to get me. I don't have a new one to share with you yet because I am resistant to put my personal information out there. But currently the phone number that you probably have for me, which I'll put in the chat, still works. So if anyone needs to speak to me about anything, that's probably the best. I probably won't answer because I'm getting a lot of spam on that now, after it being on the website for 2 years. But I just wanted to let everybody know that if you get bounces from my Commerce Authority email, that's why.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Anybody else new that I've missed this morning? Okay, well, if not, let's move on. Excuse me. So we will not be having a briefing from the broadband office. As you know, they are in the process of evaluating their applications and their application process, and so they can't speak publicly at the moment. So we will not hear from them today. Anybody want to say anything about that they know that's going on with the broadband office this morning? I take that to be a no. So we're going to hear in just a couple of minutes from Randy Leaning, who, those of you who have been attending our meetings regularly, he is one of those people who attends very regularly. And I got to tell you, every once in a while, I have an opportunity to really get to know some of the people who participate in these meetings, and I get blown away with people like Randy, who is so knowledgeable about what's happening around the country, and even in the last 2 weeks, lots of stuff is happening, and so it's going to be good to hear from Randy in just a little while. Lucy, are you online? Lucy Howell? I take that to be a no. Okay, just a reminder for those of you who may have forgotten, and I try to include it in all my emails, but Paul Ross, who is on this call, did an amazing video, AZ Broadband Closing the Digital Divide. If you have not seen that video or you want to share it, please do it. It's just really awesome. Paul, you want to say anything more about the video again?
It's getting a little old right now, but I might have to do an update in the next 6 months or so. But it just celebrates what we're all collectively trying to do to help Arizona, and whether it's pushing connectivity via fiber or fixed wireless or whatever means, and also how it's all tied to workforce. And it's tied for the betterment of our community. Really, in a way, it's our efforts for nation building within Arizona.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. And just a reminder, although I'm not sure if they still need it, but we had a request from Senator Kelly's office. They are trying to be an advocate for us, particularly now with the digital inclusion related issues. And so they are asking people to send them Judy Soltrip, who is the Northern Arizona Outreach and Constituent Services Coordinator for his office, has asked that we send them stories of how the cuts, particularly to BEAD at this point, and DEA, the Digital Equity Act funding, has impacted your organization. We're not looking necessarily for individuals, but more for organizations and how it's impacted your organization, your plans, and how that will impact your constituents. So even though, we're moving on at the federal level, and you'll hear that from Randy later. But it's not too late to send that information. Okay, so moving on. I think we're going to jump the agenda a little bit. And Mala, Mala, are you online? Mala, are you there? I guess she's not there. Holly, are you here? No. And Anthony, are you here? So I guess we're not going to hear from the state library. But I do want to tell you that hopefully we are all confirmed the next few weeks. Um, Next week, assuming that we're all confirmed with him, the Joey Wender, who is the new executive director for Shelby, the Schools, Health, and Libraries Broadband Coalition, is scheduled to be with us next week. Joey has been hanging out in Washington quite a bit. Probably he lives, I don't know if he lives there or not, but he's hanging out in Washington, following all the stuff that's happening for broadband, digital inclusion, and so forth. And so if anybody knows what's happening besides Randy, who's online here, Joey would be that guy. So hopefully he will be here next week. Some future things. I had hoped to have Ryan Murray here, who's the Deputy Director for the Arizona Department of Homeland Security and the state Chief Information Security Officer. And I was hoping to have him here this morning, and then he told me he had to be done by 8:30. So I just decided we would reschedule him. But he is engaged in a lot of really great cybersecurity initiatives, and he's pretty well connected with most of the cybersecurity organizations in the state. And there's a lot of activity going on. So I was hoping Ryan would be here to kind of give us an update on what's happening in cybersecurity. Um, and um, and then also, I'll be meeting this week or next week, I'm sorry, with Carlos Contreras, who is the head of the Office of Economic Opportunity. And he is going to hopefully give us a presentation in the next few weeks to kind of give us an update on what's happening in workforce development in Arizona. He's another one of those guys that who knows a lot about what's happening, particularly in the workforce area. So hopefully he will be on the agenda in the near future. And then next thing, it, excuse me, that we had planned to do several months ago is to do a panel on public networks, not municipal networks, but publicly owned networks. Gigi Sohn, who many of you know, is the executive director of the American Association of Public Broadband. And right now is a pretty important time and seems to be a big movement for the development of public networks. And so we will be trying to do a panel with her and Randy and a couple of other people. And so I hope to get that. That actually may be a special meeting rather than using just our meeting time. So those are a couple of things that are on the agenda and will be coming up soon. So any other comments, questions or comments about that before I move on? So Michael Kendall, I see you were online. Did you have anything from the Department of Education that you'd like to share this morning?
Yes, good morning, Steve. And yes, Michael Kindle. I'm the project manager for Arizona Department of Education. I help to administrate the broadband expansion program and a number of infrastructure projects we have going on. But things have been relatively quiet for us, Steve, just given the state of what has happened in our environment the last few weeks, couple months. Our focus has been, we had several projects that were for completion dates into June. And so that's, but as far as new work going forward, I'm just like all the rest of us, Steve, just sitting and waiting.
Okay. Thanks, Michael. Any questions for Michael? So so Frank Martinez, you want to follow up from our discussion yesterday? Anything that you need or want from people?
Not at the minute. I think maybe in a future meeting I might have something to inquire about, but not right now.
Sounds
Thanks,
good. Sure.
Yep.
And David Crassler, we haven't seen you in a while, I don't think. Do you want to just say hello? David, are you there? Okay, moving on. Oh, so I'm sorry. So Mitch Gorson, welcome again, Mitch. Mitch is with Cisco. He's been with us before, and you just want to give us a quickie intro, and then we'll schedule you for a presentation again in the future.
Hello, Steve. I'm with Cisco Systems. As you know, we are the network equipment and cybersecurity service provider to multiple state and local government agencies and universities, colleges, and more throughout Arizona. Thanks for including me.
You bet. Glad to have you with us, Mitch. So, anything else before we move on to hearing from Randy this morning? So, if not, I'm going to turn it over to Randy Leaning. I've learned Randy, getting your name right, um, who is the founder of the Broadband Toolkit. And as I mentioned earlier, Randy is incredible. Yeah, I will allow you to share. Um, no, I'm going to stop sharing and let you share. Um, and Randy is incredibly tuned in to what's happening at the federal level with a number of states and so forth. And so I know he's been here before. He's talked a lot, but he's got a lot to give us updates. As I said, couldn't even keep track of all the things that have happened in the last couple of weeks while I've been on vacation. So anyway, Randy, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. You might want to again just do a quickie what the broadband toolkit is.
Okay, yeah, you bet. So our role in the industry is we do a lot of analytics. So when people are investing in broadband, we have resources that say here's where you can that are uncovered, and so we provide a lot of analytics. And as sort of part of that too, it's important to be current on policy because policy often kind of drives the analytics, and so that's where that's kind of what motivates a lot of my engagement and interest at the policy level. And what I put together today is actually, this has been to say that this has been an eventful few weeks is an understatement. It's been very very consequential. And so what I did is I put together a few slides that I thought would be would be helpful to folks. And let me just ask, can everyone see is it sharing okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay. Um, so what I did is, and I'm going to drop this into the chat when I'm done as a PDF. So it's got all the links. So if you don't get those, they'll be coming your way momentarily. So one of the things I thought I'd start with is just a little bit of recommended reading. So everyone has heard a lot about the restructuring policy notice that came out on June 6th. There are a couple other related documents that are worth reading that come from the NTIA. They came out with what they call the Understanding the BEAD Restructuring Policy Notice, and it's basically a PowerPoint tutorial on a lot of the implications of the policy change. And then and actually I think a lot of state broadband offices did webinars on it, and I think the ACA did. I'm not absolutely positive, but I think that's the case. And then there's another document called the BEAD Final Proposal Guidance, and this is not designed for ordinary people. It's mainly for state broadband offices. But if you're trying to sort of understand the details of the policy, there's a lot of great stuff in it. And a couple of years ago, there was a notice that came out under the original BEAD NOFO. So this basically replaces and updates it, or at least updates it, if that makes sense. And so the next thing I thought might be helpful is just a quick vignette on timing. So the notice dropped on June 6th, and basically it triggered a 90-day window where a bunch of things need to happen. And this is sort of just a simplified version of it. So basically, 14 days after the notice, the NTIA committed to state offices that they would give a tabulation of sort of rescinded federal funding. So this is companies that perhaps had RDOF awards and dropped out or drew new maps or stuff like that. So that this is important to state offices in redrawing their maps. There's also a process where states need to notify unlicensed fixed wireless providers that they're essentially have a right to have their locations removed from the map if they're if they're of unserved and underserved, if they're providing qualifying service and meet certain criteria. So that's played out in June, and it's sort of a notice and response process. And about 45 out of 50 states have completed that either in June or early July. And then basically in August, there's a 14-day required public comment period, and then the notice needs to be filed by September 4th. So basically, July, plus or minus a little bit, is the month to run the benefit of the bargain round, and so that's sort of a timeline, in a snapshot.
Randy, maybe you're going to get to this, but can you just explain a little more about the bargain round, please?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. No, thanks, Steve. So basically all of the state broadband offices have done their subgrantee allocation processes and had provisional awardees. So part of the requirement of the Restructuring Policy Act is that states open that again for bidding for new categories of players. And so this is specifically technologies that were excluded other than fiber to a large extent that were excluded or at least minimized in the earlier rounds. And within Arizona, they just opened the window for that, and I think it runs for 2 to 3 weeks or so, and it's very quick. And typically, in most states, people who pre-registered for it originally remain registered and can update their filing or keep it similar, and then new parties can participate as well. And then the other thing that's happened is there's been a flurry of interesting letters, I'd put it that way, on sort of policy notice topics. So WISPA, the Wireless ISP Association, sent a letter to the NTIA talking about several states had indicated that they wanted to have a testing requirement for wireless ISPs. And so they were sort of pushing back against that. And they also indicated a few things where they wanted the NTIA to provide clarification. And actually the NTIA did. So that's actually a really helpful letter to read and has some interesting detail. There was also a letter from a group of senators to the Commerce Department and from the NTCA that kind of largely represents fiber interests to the NTIA. And there was also an interview with Gary Bolton and the FBA and FCC Commissioner Gomez, who basically made some arguments about how the ground is still tilted towards fiber. So those were good discussions. And then very late breaking news, just this morning, like an hour and a half ago, Gary Bolton sent a letter to all of the membership of Fiber Broadband Association, and you'll probably see reporting on this today because it's pretty interesting. But there's been a lot of analysts, going through the one big beautiful bill act, which just passed, and when we see it reported in the news, we see a lot of stuff on Medicaid and a lot of stuff on just all sorts of provisions. One of the things that is important in terms of the dollar figures is actually some of the tax provisions for corporations that are particularly beneficial to capital intensive industries, and fiber is one of them. And so basically, there's been a bunch of analysts, and then he sent a letter to the membership. And so basically, the view is that this is going to very substantially benefit the free cash flow of a lot of fiber operators. So you've got companies that were struggling, and some negative people sort of having problems recently. So that'll reverse that. So in an environment where the fiber industry has taken a lot of hits, it's a really interesting and perspective. So there are a couple of things in the policy notice that are particularly consequential, and I wanted to step through a few of these, and mainly focusing on just a few things on the unlicensed side that people may or may not know. So in Appendix A, it lays out a set of requirements for unlicensed fixed wireless providers, and it talks about managing interference and planning capacity and managing the impact of weather, among other things. So I wanted to unpack a few things that I think are interesting. Um, Most of us, when we think about a wireless ISP, this is sort of what we picture. It's a point to multi-point antenna on a tower or a building pointed to a home, and this is sort of what it looks like, and they provide internet service. What's interesting is there's a whole another category of wireless broadband providers that are not as obvious. And here are three different products. The one on the left is from AT&T. The one in the middle is from T-Mobile. The one on the right is from Verizon. And basically, what they do is they use the cellular network, so something that's been built decades ago, to provide fixed services. And so they file with the FCC not only as mobile providers but also as fixed providers. And those of you who watched the Super Bowl or watched it in 2022 or 2023 or 2024 would have seen the T-Mobile Super Bowl commercials, and you can see in the background there's this little box, and basically they're trying to compete with cable, and so the argument is forget about all the complexity of installation and drilling holes. Just walk into the store, get this box, plug it in, and you're up and going. And these tend to be services that sort of underperform, say, cable and certainly underperform fiber, and are often not qualifying broadband because of the performance thresholds. Although sometimes they're very good as well. It depends. But they're offered at a lower price point. So it's an interesting sort of piece in the market. And this is a slide that may be overwhelming, but actually it's a very simple message. That basically, if you look at the filing of these firms as mobile operators, you get sort of this colored gestalt sort of picture here of lots of dust particles. And basically each of the bright spots is where a cell site is located. And what I've done in this image is I've juxtaposed on top of the mobile, filing, sort of the fixed filing, which is the olive-colored, larger hexagons. And you'll see that what these companies do, and this is all T-Mobile data, but if you look at AT&T or Verizon, it's pretty much the same. And if you change geographies, it's also pretty much the same. But basically, what they do is they offer the fixed service in areas where they've got really high quality 4G and 5G coverage, and they don't offer it elsewhere. But this is a huge and growing segment within the industry, and you'll see when you look at the quarterly reports of the large mobile providers, you'll see them talk about this as well. So this is a picture of something the FCC issued, and is one of the few snapshots that we have into broadband adoption, okay, as opposed to coverage. Most of what the FCC's broadband site reports is who covers each geography, but these are numbers that represent the number of people that have taken out their wallet and bought a particular service. And so we've got all the traditional fixed broadband providers here. You've got mobile providers where pretty much every man, woman, and child has a smartphone, and you've got hotspots and other stuff. You also have fixed wireless broken out into two segments, and and basically they're labeled here as licensed and unlicensed. But if you dig into the data, the first group is overwhelmingly, probably 90%, cellular providers who are providing service using the architecture I just described, and then the unlicensed are pretty much all traditional WISPs. And there are some traditional WISPs that have used licensed. But what's interesting here in the licensed component, this has it's quadrupled in size over a 2-year period. So very, very consequential growth. And again, you'll see this reported by CEOs of mobile providers as well. It's something that they're interested in. So having understood that, if we step back and say, what are the strengths and weaknesses and pros and cons of different wireless architectures, and are they able sort of to deliver the goods? And that's an important question. So a WISP architecture, basically what they do is they start with a set of elevated sites, and they do what's called a viewshed analysis, where you basically say, what can I see, line of sight from those sites, and it's many locations, but it's not all of them. And then if someone requests service, they'll often look up to see if they have line of sight or near line of sight, and then if they do, they'll attempt an installation, and not all of those succeed. Okay, so there's some issues there. On the cellular architecture, basically, they have companies have deployed sites over a period of decades. So the coverage footprint is there, but they offer service only in areas where they have a very high signal quality. So that's sort of interesting. And they also and I think this is true of pretty much each of the companies, and they're pretty upfront about this in describing how the service is provisioned, is they give priority to mobile customers, and in a situation where the network's overloaded, they'll throttle back the fixed user. So on the one hand, the fixed user gets an inexpensive service, which for many is good enough. At the same time, though, it's doesn't have the guarantees that a wired service would have. So that's a mouthful. So anyway, here are just a couple other quick things on pieces that the policy notice discusses. One is they talk about interference and the need to mitigate interference risk. So here are 5 different types of sort of interference or spectrum related risks. And what's interesting is some relate to unlicensed providers, others actually relate to licensed providers. So if you're unlicensed, someone could just light up an emitter and impact your service, and you couldn't control that. And so that's definitely a risk. It's not probably an overwhelming risk, though. So it's another is just the general rise in a noise floor, and this is something that affects unlicensed and licensed, but is manageable. 2 issues that affect licensed providers, in particular CBRS. One is CBRS band is the primary user in the band are naval radar and radio telescopes. And so if a naval vessel comes into port and turns on their radar, it could actually shut down nearby CBRS systems. And so that's a big deal. And then Congress is also talking about auctioning the spectrum. So those are all considerations when we think about how the different technologies fit together. The other piece is weather risk, and a lot of the state broadband discussions ask people to respond how they will manage weather risk, and the idea is that rain causes attenuation in radio signals, and so that's something that actually I would put in a category of not particularly impactful, simply because most of the bands that are used for both licensed and unlicensed are sort of in C band or lower frequency, and they tend to not be greatly impacted. And and there are actually things that can be you can design for in your engineering setup. So the way providers usually think about things is the world is broken into what are called ITU rain regions, and so they represent the amount of precipitation an area gets during the most intense period. And so sort of the way an engineering driven firm would approach things, and any kind of wireless ISP should be doing this, is they'll say, what kind of availability do I want to have relative to weather? Do I want it to be 99.9% or 99.99 or 99.999? And so in the latter case, it's like 5 nines of reliability means you'll have 5 minutes a year of weather related outage. So you can design into that. And so there's a methodology for all of that. So that's just as an approach. So anyway, those are all my slides, and I wanted to get through them. And I suspect there may be a question or two, because I know I zipped through that. But anyway, I thought hopefully those are some interesting things to think about on a policy front.
Well, Randy, can you talk a little bit about the issue of, excuse me, the auction of spectrum coming up, or what the issue is with that and
Oh,
status of that?
absolutely, yeah. So this is and actually this is something that I haven't followed. I followed closely early on, but I haven't as recently. But basically, the FCC, over a period of decades, has been given auction authority by Congress to, to auction off, pieces of spectrum. And there are actually two reasons for that. One is it's a way of getting spectrum into the hands of the public to use. And what they used to do is, what people would call beauty contests, where companies would say, you should give it to me because, I'm a great company. And this happened around the world. And it was very, very political, and didn't, and wasn't a great way to allocate spectrum. And pretty much since about the year 2000, auctions have become the dominant mechanism for getting policy into the hands, and specifically with CBRS. Right now, there's the kind of it's called GAA, but it's essentially similar to unlicensed. And then there's other allocations that people have at county level, which are purchased and owned. But basically, the FCC has been, and Congress has been thinking about re-auctioning all of this stuff, with a larger geographic area, and I believe a higher power threshold. And so basically, it would raise a lot of money for the federal government, but it would also mean that people that are currently using it might be left in the dark. So I don't think any decision has been made, but it basically represents just a risk, to people who are using CBRS today, that could happen.
So, Randy, part of the argument, if I understand correctly, is the use of the funds that are raised by the auction. That I think a lot of folks would like to see that money being used for technology related, broadband related issues. And instead, it looks like it's going to go into the government's funds.
Yeah. So good question. So I'm not as personally as conversant. I sort of dropped out of closely monitoring that, maybe a month or two ago.
Okay. Bill, I don't know if I don't mean to put you on the spot. I know we're going to hear from you guys in a couple of weeks, but do you have anything that you want to add to that?
Well, I think part of it is that Congress needed to reauthorize the ability to allow the FCC to do the auctioning. So there's a couple of things in motion there.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Okay, any questions for Randy? Anything else, Randy, that you want to add?
I got a question for him, Steve.
Yeah, go ahead, Vaughn.
Mark, comment. I'm short. I've got the T-Mobile box at my house, and I had to go that route because I was being served by CenturyLink by hardwire, and I was lucky to get 200 or 300 kilobytes. Now I'm way up in the megabyte range, so it's doing well. But I like that map you showed, Steve or Randy, that you showed that shows where the concentrations are, and depending on where you are from that tower. So I'm sure glad to present that.
It's been a really popular service, and I think what's interesting is it's easy for those of us in the industry to think, well, if you don't have 100 down, 20 up, you have nothing. It's worthless, But actually, for the American consumer, there are, a lot of people who are reasonably happy with something in the middle, and also there are people who have just absolutely fantastic service with these kind of services, and also in an era where the Affordable Connectivity Plan has run out of money and been sunset. They're offering it at a very modest price point. So that's a really nice thing for for a segment of for price sensitive consumers.
So, Randy, Mark was saying at the HEIC meeting that these cellular services are not eligible for BEAD funding because they don't guarantee the 120. Is that right?
I think in general that's probably the case, and I think the way that these are so what's interesting though is if someone has these are just categorized by the FCC as licensed fixed wireless. So so cellular services are one thing, but these are licensed fixed wireless offerings by cellular companies. So they're filed differently. So for instance, if a location is served by licensed fixed wireless, then it's off the map in terms of unserved or underserved. So, and that's been the case since the beginning of BEAD. But of course, it's geared towards the performance. So, so the ones that would be off the map would be areas where they are delivering, 100 down, 20 up, or representing that on the map. Which is maybe a minority of the locations, but in some cases they are.
So it gets confusing because if they're taking them off the map where they are delivering it, how do we know that they couldn't deliver it in these the 120 and in the locations that are meant to be served by BEAD? Why are they excluding them when they could deliver 120 in some of those locations?
Yeah. No, so let me just maybe I misstated. So basically, where they are delivering service, then those locations are not considered uncertain. Then they're given
I
credit for
understand
that.
that point.
Yeah.
But what about why are they being excluded from BEAD funding when they could deliver 120 in various guaranteed 120 in certain locations? I don't understand why they
Yeah, and I'm not, and I guess so. This is what's interesting. I'm not sure if so that I'm not sure that they are like I think in technology neutral everything should be allowed. I'm not sure I'm not sure though what like most of the discussion recently has been around unlicensed, and so this is where what I think is really interesting about just the the way the wireless community is being treated in the new rules is to me there's not a particularly meaningful distinction between licensed and unlicensed, even though there's some, because you could operate either way, but architecturally, the architecture does matter, and even within the architecture, a cellular operator could change their policy and say we will consistently deliver 120 100 down, 20 up. But many file on that basis. And I think I haven't seen a lot of challenges in the media where people say, hey, but gee, I'm getting throttled. And it may be that I'm not sure what percentage of users do get throttled, but that hasn't really, from what I've seen, been a big topic of public discussion.
So what you're saying is you're still not clear on whether they're excluded or not excluded.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen anything saying that they're excluded, but also I haven't seen wireless providers, rushing in and saying, you can, because I think, I guess what I would say is they're participating pretty happily as it is, and yeah, and a lot of them do file for 120 down, 20 up, and so that means that those locations would be off the BEAD map.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
But we've all the fresh numbers are out on that, so I like all of our tools will show where people are and where that's the case. But
Okay, so it's still from your point of view, it's still somewhat of an unsettled question that they haven't clarified. Is what I.
it is, yeah. And so it's a subtle reason to have a fiber preference that both with both the WISP architecture and the 4G 5G architecture both fall short, but for different reasons. In some instances. So I would say that that's sort of an argument for that people who want to be fiber first, could dig in a little bit more deeply into that.
Yeah. Seems like it's going to be, personally, it seems like to me there's going to be a lot of confusion about what's acceptable, and it's not going to, when the NTIA gets these final proposals, they're going to have a lot of issues to
Ya me
sort out.
comuniqué con Abraham, él me va a ayudar a hacerlo.
Okay. Randy, a couple of things. So David Kreis, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing your last name correctly, David, but you put a comment in the chat. You want to just share with people about that? What you guys
Yeah, I
are
was
doing in
just
Mesa?
mentioning we've had an effort with CBRS and Mesa. We're partnered with um, I forgot the name of the nonprofit, but basically we build the towers and we have a nonprofit that received the grant and they buy off equipment from companies that are just life cycling, and the nonprofit will go out and distribute that equipment to the homes. And so our towers will provide uh, just really good, really normal, basic, what you get that at the library internet to those families, and they're able to get internet in their homes. When you look at the maps of where the fiber folks don't go, and where there's the most need, looking at like free or reduced lunch or low income housing, those maps always overlap in our experience. So it's really disappointing to always hear fiber first and that all this money is going to get people connected when we already know the people that give fiber don't want to be in those locations. And there's other areas that could benefit from something so easily because this is also the densely populated areas. You're looking at like the downtown area of a town that you're not going to have a lot of obstructions going into it when you're going with like a millimeter wave or doing the CBRS, anything over the air, that there's just so many other options out there, right? Like for people to still be disconnected because somebody in the 80s said that fiber's got to be the end all be all.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And what's interesting is the ease of deployment of wireless, is one of the things that makes it really appealing. Like even the 4G, 5G solutions, and I know in like and also even with WISP architecture, but mainly with the 4G, 5G, and sort of the the CBRS based solutions, are similar. You can hand someone a device and they can be up and running in lightning speed and with a lot less infrastructure investment. So that's definitely the positive aspect.
Yeah, and our partners ComputeUp, I just put in the link on there, which I'm sure a lot of people here are familiar with.
Okay. Paul, you got a question or comment?
Yeah, I was just going to say when it comes to fiber is fantastic, and a lot of things, everything's connected by fiber at some point, in the background. The backbones are all fiber. And even with the high speed wireless now, you can get amazing backbones, 20, 40 gig backbones that are transmitting all this data. I was part of a project that helped stood up a number of towers running a CBRS private LTE network. And we learned a lot going through that whole process. So some of what I just saw in terms of the cell diagrams and everything, very, very familiar, having done a lot of that work. But when you look at where our schools are, for instance, and I'll say this, if you get up around 80 feet in the Phoenix area, for instance, you've got line of sight nearly to everything in the local community area. And so it's well within the range for point to point to multi-point very easily. And based on some of my initial data and work, about 143 sites across Phoenix would cover about 90% of the student populations of all the schools wirelessly. The other thing that I want to just remind people about that is fiber is fantastic, but it comes with a price tag. And the end consumer might not be able to afford the service that is being delivered across the fiber. And so affordability becomes a major issue. I mean, I would love to have fiber, but I also don't want to have the $100 to $200 bill that goes with it, right, per month. To be frank, I'm quite happy with my little CenturyLink plan because it's affordable. But yes, fiber is fantastic. I just came back from a broadband summit conference, and obviously fiber was very big there, talking about MDUs, browns, as well as greenfield development work. So, but I think there's a space for everybody in this area. It's just how do we find that space that still delivers a good service, but also makes sure that it is affordable.
Yeah, and no, I think Paul, what you said in terms of affordability is actually important to underscore. Just that you can easily have a situation where everyone has gold-plated fiber service that's not affordable, right? And that doesn't move the needle. And so yeah, for many consumers and also private networks, all of the wireless solutions are very impactful. And particularly, what's nice too is when you have a world where you've got a multiple competing solutions, that's also good too. Like even if you've got areas that have fiber, if you have lower priced wireless, so let's say that that price competition and service competition is beneficial.
Okay. So, Randy, a couple of quick things. First of all, do you want to make any comments about, I mean, I know that we have 50 states.
Súbele el volumen
We have a
a su
lot more states,
teléfono
but
y cuando se marque en la
okay,
pantalla
who are we?
la imagen de volumen, le vas a puchar a los tres
Okay,
puntitos
hold on just a
y
second
le
here.
vas a desactivar el no molestar.
Sorry about that. So Randy, obviously we have a lot more states, but can you give a kind of a quickie general what's happening with the states in terms of now that all these broadband requirements have changed and all of that sort of stuff, how they're doing with getting their plans together and stuff?
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. There are some sites that sort of track what's happening at the state broadband office level, and what I'm finding is a lot of those sites are not even current because things are just moving so quickly. So I guess the one data point that I'm aware of is that most have put out their notices for unlicensed fixed wireless providers, and that sort of reciprocal process has completed the loop. And I think maybe a third of states or a significant number have either started or about to start their benefit of the bargain round. But a lot of it is just happening so fast that it's hard to keep track of other than the fact that they'll pretty much need to meet the timelines within July. So, in order to land to finish by end of July or early August.
Okay, thanks, Randy. So one last thing, and Randy, I know that infrastructure is kind of your bailiwick. Do you have any comments or thoughts about the digital inclusion and what's happening with that at this
Oh
point,
yeah, no,
or not
great
happening?
question. Yeah, yeah. So one of the things that was again sort of a disappointment to people is that there used to be there was an allowance under the original NOFO for non-infrastructure funds. So basically, if a state has used up all of their has served all of their unserved and underserved, then they could use the additional funds for other things. So basically, in the restructuring notice, basically the NTIA kind of pulled back on that a little bit, but said we will decide later. So one recommendation that I've heard from people is that when states file their plans, if you've got money left on the table, which is often the case, be very explicit that you want to use this for for digital opportunity type stuff, and build that into your plan to discourage it from going back to Treasury, basically.
Okay. Any other questions for Randy? Okay, so before we end for today, any other announcements, comments, thoughts that people have? I guess that means that's a no. Okay, well, I'm going to stop recording. And as you know, we do have kibitzing for anybody who wants to just stay online and chat for a while. And if not, we'll be done for today. So anyway, thank you all for being here, and we will